Thanks a lot for being here. I'm Sabine. I'm your host tonight in this wonderful location of Mindspace. I'm the chapter director of Startup Grind. I don't know how much of you have actually come to our events and our fireside chats. I recognize quite a few faces, but nevertheless, I'll tell you a little bit about what Startup Grind is before we welcome our speaker. So, Startup Grind is an organization that stems out the US, started in 2010, and they are now in 300 cities and 115 countries. And basically, for each city, you have a chapter director who is in charge of organizing events, fireside chats, where we share the journey, the entrepreneurial adventure of a successful founder or investor or innovator, someone who wants to share his insights about entrepreneurship. So that's how it was created. I run this chapter now for a year. Exactly, we had already 8, I think, events, and it's always a joy for me to welcome speaker and to share their story with you guys. So welcome, everyone. So our next speaker is actually someone I got to know on a personal side. He's a friend of mine. It took me quite some time to figure out that he was actually a successful entrepreneur because he's quite humble and he doesn't speak too much about his startup. And his startup is actually came from a very, very simple idea, bringing something that was very strong offline in the online world. It's about ride sharing. Ride sharing, Mitfahren in Deutsch, actually started in the 50s with Mitfahrzentrale. So this group of communities trying to bring passengers and drivers together at the train stations. Had a very popular moment during the oil crisis when it was very expensive to ride a car. And came back as a trend once we all became more internet savvy with smartphone, with GPS. And at the end, carpooling.com was a concept which already existed offline and then boomed online. So I'm very honored today to welcome Michael Heinecke, co-founder of carpooling.com, who is going to tell us about his journey as an entrepreneur. What were the challenges? Come on stage. What were the challenges? What were the success stories? The ups and downs of the entrepreneur, and also how he came with the successful exit to BlaBlaCar. Welcome, Michi.
Thanks for the introduction.
So let's start from the beginning. From what I heard, you study in Würzburg, BWL, started a PhD/MBA, and then went straight into entrepreneurship. So is that because that's something that you really wanted to do like from the beginning on? Or were you kind of not knowing very much what you were looking forward into a career?
Well, actually the story was a little bit different. So we founded the company back in 2001. And actually it was not the founding or the foundation of a company, it was more kind of a prodding doing our final exams. And had the idea we want to do something which is in opposition to that what we learned in the university was like theoretical learning models and having less contact with practice or work. So we had the idea to fund something online which you could see directly on the browser on a worldwide basis. So then I finished my studies and then I did my PhD, and after that the decision was whether I join a consultant company or do my own business. And then I thought it might make sense to do my own business and not having this 24-hour work like the consultants. But actually that changed a bit then, so I had to work also a lot. But I never planned to be an entrepreneur, so maybe that's the answer to your question.
And in your surroundings, I mean, we're talking about 2001, right? Right after the aftermath of the internet bubble. So not really like the typical moment where entrepreneurship is so popular. So is that something that because you were thinking, okay, there is a need in the market, I think I can bring something of value to the customers? Or was it from a passion, like coming from you didn't want to have a corporate career like everyone else or have a boss? Or How did you?
Actually, I didn't spend so much thoughts on that. It was more like I said, I want to do something, and I didn't think about having employees. I never heard the word startup. I never heard the word entrepreneurship when I founded this project. So it was more like I had two friends, and we had the idea of doing something online and giving a value to other people like me. So I had my girlfriend living outside of the city of Würzburg. She lived in Nuremberg, Matthias in Munich, Stefan in Düsseldorf. So we all had the pain of traveling once a week or at least twice a month going there. The train was super expensive, even in that times. We had no car, and getting there was something we wanted to do. So we thought there are plenty of other people having the same issue, the same challenge every week, and that carpooling might be the right answer to them.
But they were already, as I said earlier, maybe like the Mitfahrzentrale. So this already existed. You could actually do some ride sharing.
So that was for us the perfect market fit, because we have seen there are offices in all train stations, also in Würzburg. But they were, when you entered them, they were working with file cards still. You had to show your passport before you would get a ride. And when you entered them, it was like a flashback to the 70s. So it was, I know, I didn't feel very good with the people there. It was like train station atmosphere. So I didn't feel good to take a ride from them. So we thought if we take this database online, make it available globally or at least nationally, and not only in Würzburg, and you can enter it from everywhere you want, from every computer which is connected to the internet, then this is a big added value. Mm-hmm. And finally that was the right
That was the idea.
decision, yeah.
So through the studies, you did your PhD in cloud computing, and I think Matthias and Stefan also had some corporate experiences where they acquired certain skills.
Yeah.
Was it kind of intentional that you went into these specific studies and topics because you had that idea and you wanted to bring like some personal experiences before actually jumping?
No, actually my career wasn't as planned as...
You didn't have the 10-year like career plan like everyone asked you during interviews?
Maybe in a backflash I would say that is something I would have done, but no, I didn't plan anything. So this was quite an occasion. So also choosing my PhD career was like, I went to my PhD advisor, or my potential PhD advisor, and he showed me his research topics, and I said, okay, this is something I'm interested in, but I didn't plan to.
And it was the time where Google and Amazon were kind of starting,
yeah.
So that's the interest that you were.
Yeah. So it should be something online, that's right, but the topic of cloud computing, which wasn't called cloud computing in that time, was something completely new to me. So nothing planned.
Matthias and Stefan, your two co-founders, when they went to, I think it was Yahoo Finance and Audi in online marketing, were they also kind of intentionally starting this career to then add the value to carpooling.com?
Matthias? No, that's my co-founder. No, I think none of them has planned this intentionally.
But it was kind of beneficial because at the end you had pretty good team set up.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your team. How, was it love at first sight, and then you suddenly say, okay, we're gonna build this together, and because you were studying together, right?
Yeah. We were studying together, and I did my master thesis together with Stefan at university, and we were talking a lot besides our boring diploma thesis topics about what we could do. And we had a lot of discussions about things that we couldn't do, because in that time internet was slow, not so many people had access to the internet, there were no payments available online, so you could use credit cards, but the reputation of credit cards was very poor in that times.
So back in 2001.
2001, yeah. Micropayments, impossible, really impossible. Nobody would have thought that it makes one day sense to pay €1 or even less online. Impossible. And no social media, of course, no performance marketing. So in that time, it was really hard to find something where you could think that it would give value to the audience. So finally, we come to the conclusion that the idea of Mitfahrgelegenheit, because we had the pain to get there every weekend, would make completely sense. And as we were students, and we had a lot of contact to other students, we were eating in the Mensa, having our fellow students, went to parties as much as we can. So We thought the word
That
of
was your
mouth.
marketing strategy?
It was a kind of marketing, yes, of course. Of course, yeah, sure.
So it's your target segment, right?
It has
The
been like that,
students and
yeah. So I was standing in front of the Mensa at 12 o'clock in the noon and giving flyers to people. Yeah. That was my business for some weeks. Yeah.
Okay, so
and
that's...
going to parties and talking to people, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so the idea you have, the team you have, so what are the first kind of 100 days of Mitfahrgelegenheit or carpooling.com? So
Yeah.
how do you start from an idea, a concept where you say, okay, that might be, pretty awesome. There's a need in the market.
Well, today I would do it completely differently, of course. So today there are design thinking approaches where you test your product market fit and you do questionnaires before you launch. You have an MVP. In that times we had nothing. So we had no experience in that. We had no knowledge how to do this. We just thought, let's do it and let's try it out. So we met.
But this agility iteration is something that you still maintain today.
Yeah,
This
correct.
ability of
correct.
pivoting.
Yeah, so we learned a lot in that time, but for the first version, we just sat there for 3 weeks coding and ate pizza a lot, sat in had our 56 kilobit modem at home, loading PHP files up and seeing what happens and learning how to deal with databases. That was our strategy, and then it worked out. Then we had, I think, rapidly 100 users. Just the marketing strategy, going to the Mensa or parties and people, attracting things, and so it worked out. And then every time we did new features. Of course, a lot of bug fixing because we had plenty of bugs and things happened we never expected. But we used all time we had for new features. So that was a kind of iterative.
And your learning curve get kind of exponential. So now, bringing this back to today and what are entrepreneurs going through, would you recommend then for entrepreneurs to learn about design thinking, learn about what an MVP is, iteration, things like this at school and maybe in a corporate career before kind of launching their startup?
Well, at least I would recommend to learn how to structure yourself. That's very important. And then to test a lot. So talk to people in advance, do questionnaires, do an MVP, then test everything again, then have the courage to withdraw everything you have done before and do it again. Because it takes a long time till you have a running product. And only if you have a good product, then you will have users, of course. And especially in that time where you have products for everything, for almost everything online, it's very hard to find your niche where you could be successful.
So iteration and customer feedback.
Yeah, super important.
So how did you do it at that time? Customer feedback, like how did you get your first customers? So you're saying, okay, parties and flyers, but this stickiness that you actually built because you were a marketplace, right? So you needed at least as both sides, demand and supply, passengers and drivers. How do you build this?
Yeah, it was very hard to get the drivers, of course. So we had passengers, or plenty of passengers, because people had the demand to go from A to B, like going there cheap and conveniently. But getting drivers was very hard. We had chance that there were some drivers at least, but not enough. So there were plenty of disappointed passengers. So what we did, of course, we tried to focus on drivers and thought, where could we get those drivers? So we opened up an affiliate program, or let's say a partner program, where we could integrate our Mitfahrgelegenheit site on other websites. So we made it the brand bigger, so that people who have more money, the affluent people, saw there's Mitfahrgelegenheit, they can earn money by offering the available seats. I think that was a very important thing. And then we did also in an iterative approach, we introduced stopovers. I think this was a very smart idea. So let's say we have a ride from Munich to Berlin, and of course there were some available seats, let's say or there were available seats still available, but somebody wanted to go from Nuremberg to Erfurt or to Jena, and then this ride was not offered on Mitfahrgelegenheit.de. So we gave the drivers the option to introduce stopovers.
So like segment his
like
ride.
Segmentation or segments. And then immediately you had the faculty of rides. So this offer was exploding. And in later times, so we did another iterative step, this was done automatically. So when you have Google Maps, then you know what is the route the driver would take, and then the system would know what is the stopover. So we could offer even rides, and the driver did not have to know where he needed to stop.
Okay, let's like rewind a little bit. So 2001, you're starting the idea, having first kind of customers and passenger drivers. You only became full-time, I guess, in 2006.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what happened in these 5 years?
Well, I was doing my PhD, which was also very
And I
time-consuming.
guess also Matthias and Stefan were still at corporate.
Yeah.
So is it possible to actually build something when you don't fully 100% focused on it?
At that time, yes. Today, no. Today, because today everything is speed is of the essence. In that time, it was possible. So we had no marketing power, or few marketing power ourselves, and we could grow steadily, year by year, month over month. But today, if you start something, you have to be fast, because if somebody likes your idea and sees, okay, there's a product market fit, then somebody will take the idea and grow faster than you. So you have to be fast. So in this time, it was okay, but today, impossible.
And when do you think you reach product market fit? Like where you felt, okay, there is actually, we can grow this.
I think right from the first day. Right from the first day, because we had, or well, let's say first day, first month at least, when we had matches on the platform. People writing us emails and saying, hey, I was riding from Würzburg to Nürnberg. Incredible, I saved so much money and I could do it from home or from the university.
Can you share a little bit the KPI? Were you monitoring any KPI actually?
Yeah, well, in these times we didn't have Google Analytics. We had a tool that could use the web logs, of course, but actually I can't recall any numbers. But I think we had at least 100 users for the first week. Matthias, do you recall? We don't know anymore.
How many rides did you do in the first months? Do you recall?
I think the problem at that time was that we couldn't measure the matches itself. It was just like you added a lift to the database, but it was not like...
And then the people were picking up their phone.
Their phone or their email, yeah.
Actually, you didn't even know if the ride had happened.
Yeah. But we got emails, so people were conforming. Customer care emails, yeah.
People getting their stuff in the car.
Yeah. But I just looked up the logs last days, and the first data I found was from 2008, and that was 1 million registered users in 2008. So
Okay.
7 years after we have launched. That's all I know today.
Okay. Well, this is a good KPI still.
It is, yeah.
So in 2006, when everyone then is on board full time.
Only me. Matthias stayed till 2009 on his job, and Stefan joined 2007. So I was employee first, and I was first until 2007.
And how do you set up the team? How do you share the task when not everyone is on board? How do you share the capital, actually?
Well, basically, I did everything for a year, and Stefan and Matthias joined for the weekends and for the evenings. So I needed Matthias a lot he was CTO for the technical stuff, and Stefan for product things. But I did some codings, I did phone calls, I did customer care, did a bit of everything for these first years.
And there were no troubles in terms of like, hey, I spent so much time on this and you're not putting any effort and...
No.
No, Matthias? Everything worked pretty well? Because I hear a lot of stories where, you not have like a full alignment between the founders, and that
I think the team went pretty well in these years. Yeah.
When did you start monetizing the platform?
Monetizing began, well, I think the second year. If you call advertising monetizing, then we did.
That's one revenue stream?
Yeah, and in that times you could earn good money by advertising. There was no surplus of page impressions in that time. So when, of course, Facebook came and Google came, that changed a bit.
And where were you saying to the advertisers, like, hey, I have a network of, a couple of hundreds people. There are students for majority of them. Do you want to target them, or?
Yeah, we had an agency in that time, and they just sold everything. In these times, it was possible to sell everything.
Okay.
They just needed page impressions.
How would you do it now then?
Today, completely different. Completely different. I think today even the market of online marketing has changed 100%. We do performance marketing. Most of it is done by social medias or Facebook and Google. So think that's a very poor idea if you want to make money just by advertising.
By just the advertising. But at the time it worked. The advertisers were not asking for a return on investment and KPI to measure who they were targeting.
Yeah.
Okay. And when did you start actually monetizing from the rights themselves?
Yeah. So we introduced a premium service 2008. It was also a famous system in that years to try freemium. So the basic service was for free, and it was possible then to have a profile on the platform, and even history where I could look at a potential driver and see that he was behaving good for a longer time. And there you had to pay, I think, 12 euros for 3 months.
That was changing from the beginning where everything was for free. So
yeah.
Maybe for those who are not familiar with carpooling.com, just how did it work? So I'm a driver,
You're a driver, you post a ride, saying you're going on next Saturday from Munich to Hamburg, for example. You have 3 available seats. This is your phone number where you can reach him, or your
So
email.
that was completely transparent from the beginning?
Completely transparent, yeah. Completely transparent. And this is the money you want to have for this ride. Proceed. Yeah. And then on the other side, the passenger went on the website, was looking for a ride, let's say also from Munich to Hamburg, and was seeing, okay, Michael is driving on Saturday. Let's look at his profile. Okay, looks like a nice guy.
But you had no rating, right? Or
the rating came later.
So how did you find out if you were a nice guy? You could have been a serial killer.
Well, there was a picture, of course. I could upload a picture. And there was a history, of course, of myself. So seeing, okay, Michael goes there every weekend, so he might be a reliable driver.
And he took some other people with him last time. So, okay, you had a track record of rides.
Exactly. And then you just called him, or sent me an email in this case, and then I said, okay, let's do it. Let's meet at the train station or main station at 8 and then get to Hamburg.
And the time you didn't have smartphone? So
smartphone,
people were getting lost? Or
no Google Maps, no nothing.
So you couldn't even find out if the ride had happened or not?
No.
Okay, and the monetization then, when you started having a fee, what was this premium service?
Yeah, I have to introduce also that we had also a provision model for bus tickets and train tickets. So that was something we introduced before the transactional model. So we offered train tickets and bus coach tickets.
The contingent of Deutsche Bahn, which was not sold on their platform, was coming to you?
No, also normal tickets for them. Okay. Not only the ones who were not sold, but also usual tickets, which went very well because we had a surplus of passengers who couldn't find a ride. So they said, okay, if I don't find a ride sharing option, I will book a train ride. That went very well. And then the transactional booking system went online, I think, in 2012. So quite late, 11 years after the launch. Okay.
And how did the customers react when you actually started with pricing? I've heard about a Mitfahrgelegenheit boycott in some articles that I read.
Yeah, of course. So people were used to use the system without paying anything, so free of charge, and even the premium service, which didn't succeed so much. And nobody had to pay for it because it was a free option to take the premium service. So there was a big cry, and people were having a strike right at the office. I don't know how many people came there, but at least they threatened us to make a strike there. And it was quite a hard time.
And what did you do?
Well, of course, we tried to convince the users that it's a good thing and that you have a proven track record in your history, that you could enable reviews, because it's the first time when you know the match was existing, you could allow them to give them star rating, which was also worldwide first for ride sharing. And that convinced, but it took, of course, the time to convince people.
And I mean, you need to show them the value why they should pay. So how did you? Was it educating them about, like, okay?
It was just educating, educating, and saying to them that the probability that the driver is not showing up or the passenger is not showing up, like it happened before, for example, then he doesn't have the right money in his pocket. Also, big issue. If you go from Munich to Nuremberg, you have to pay 13 euros, and the guy only had $20 euro bill in his pocket. Then what to do? And going out and change it somewhere, or saying, hey, I will transfer the money later, and nobody transferred the money later. So big issue. So we offered some extra features to this transactional system, and that convinced some, of course, but some, of Of course not, because they were used to use it all
And
free.
did you do actually customer survey for this before implementing it?
We did, yes, of course.
Okay. So sometimes the
always
customer survey
it's-
doesn't really hold the right results.
It's always the question who you ask, of course.
Yeah.
You never know who you ask, but we know that there will be some resistance to it.
Okay.
But that's something you have to accept. So the calculation, if you lose 10%, but if you earn from this 90% more money than losing those 10%, then it makes sense.
So in terms of pricing strategy, you kind of iterated again. So started something, saw the results, come back,
Yeah.
change something, added features, etc. When do you actually because you told me also in previous discussions that you didn't have so many KPIs to actually make a decision. So how do you feel like you're going in the right direction, and when do you feel like, okay, we need to pivot?
Yeah, it has been a little bit hard because we didn't have the KPIs. So of course we started to get the KPIs because then Google Analytics existed, so we could do also A and B testing. So we got closer to understanding how people behave. So we made adjustments, of course, and many adjustments, but our idea was also to bring innovations to the market. So the thought was, if we bring innovation like a mobile app, for example, a mobile app where you can see drivers and passengers getting to the meeting point, that this must be an added value, would have to be paid, of course. So this was more of an approach for us as being the pioneer for that, bringing new features to the market and then get the added value to the users.
Okay, so where are we now, like in terms of million registered users, if you were
In
to...
2012,
Yeah,
I think
approximately.
that was about 4 million then.
4 million registered users. So 4 million that are actually active users, meaning that they have done a ride in the last month or something like this?
Monthly active users, yeah.
Okay, and where were you in terms of countries by then?
9 countries.
Okay, how did you think about international expansion? So in terms of recruiting, in terms of setting up, because I guess, Germany was kind of your home market. You started from scratch. It was a lot of iteration, a lot of getting to also know yourself as an entrepreneur. But now you could replicate that, or what you learned, in other countries. Is that what you did, or how did you?
Yeah, we did the cheap way. So we found employees from the countries, and either we located them to Munich or we found them in Munich, because thank God there were enough people internationalized from other countries. So we brought them to our headquarters in Munich, and they were working for their countries. So they had a local phone number in Munich. They had a local phone number. They traveled to the countries once a month, being at press conferences and
talking to the
doing
government,
press, talking to government, talking to potential partners. But they were all close to our office in Munich, and I think that was the right strategy. Do it like that. Often you hear that they open offices in Madrid, in Rome, and that's very hard to shorten the distance between management and those employees, because they have to feel the product and know what's going on in the company. So I think this was the right decision to do it like that. And
in terms of branding, you also choose to have different names?
Yeah, we had to, because we had the domain names. So we have chosen domain names for each country.
Okay.
We didn't even have the carpooling domain name at that time.
When did the carpooling actually come from?
I think it was from 2011. And it came from a friend of ours.
Okay.
Well, a partner.
And but from 2001 to 2011, you were Mitfahrgelegenheit.
Mitfahrgelegenheit.at and ch.
Okay.
And I think for Italy it was Passaggio, and then later we changed to, I think, carpooling. Yeah. In Spain it was e-condusco, or non condusco.
In France it was en voiture.
En voiture.
And when did you decide to actually rebrand everything to carpooling, and why?
Because you need a global brand, of course. That's very important. And then we got the carpooling.com domain, and then we bought all the domains from the countries.
Okay. And in terms of international expansion, did you choose a little bit where to go? How did you... Because, I mean, right now you would do kind of a market analysis, finding out where is the market potential for each country, where is the highest demand, blah, blah, blah. Did you do it like this?
The
consultant approach?
Not in particular. What we did was, of course, we knew some countries from personal travel, and it needed to be countries where things are safe. That it's okay to get in the car of someone else you don't know, and you can get out of the car without being harmed in any case. And that was for sure for us, for all West European countries. That's why we have chosen Italy, Spain, France, UK, and the DACH countries, of course. We also launched Greece, which was more of a test balloon. It didn't work always very well, but that was the decision for us to go to Western Europe.
Mm-hmm. And what about US? Because I think you made a move into the US.
We did make a move to US in 2014, but that was 4 months before the acquisition, so we didn't get super high numbers there.
Okay, and that's come to my next topic. That was driven by the investors?
It was driven by the investors, yeah. So of course, if you talk to venture capitalists, in advance, if you do contracts, that everything is kind of predefined. So every event is honored in the contracts, and then you have, in case of an exit, regular long rights, and investors can choose whether they take the regular long rights whenever they want. And in this time, 2015 or 2014, when we started conversations, the investors thought that it's a good time to sell the company.
Okay, but coming back to the investors and when you got them on board. So 2009 was Earlybird?
Yes.
And 2012 was
Daimler.
Okay. Why did you get external investors? So because from 2001 to 2008, everything was working well, you were gaining users, you were becoming profitable?
Yeah, we were profitable from 2006 on already.
Okay, break even?
Early break even, yeah. We even could afford the expansion to Austria and Switzerland with our own money. Yeah.
So why external money?
Because we want to grow faster.
And that was driven by?
I think by all of us, yeah.
Okay.
And of course we have seen a competitor in France, like BlaBlaCar, which was Covoiturage at that time, and they were growing as well in the country. So we knew if we don't get money for marketing, then they will take the market completely.
And how did you choose your investors? Did you have a choice, or was...
I think we would have had a choice, but we didn't ask for other investors. So that's also a kind of stupidity doing it like that. We were approached by our investor. Mm-hmm. They're saying, hey, you're cool guys, you have a good product, we want to invest in you. And then we say, okay, good idea. Then we got a term sheet, and we say, okay, good conditions. Then we negotiated the term sheets, and then we signed the deal. Finally, we did a good thing that we negotiated very hard, but it was a stupidity not taking other offers from other investors. So if I would do it today, of course, you would collect as many term sheets as you could and then decide. But in that time, we didn't know how to do it.
So Earlybird came on board with a 37% stake?
No, I think 33 at first, but later 37, yeah.
And
we did several rounds, yeah.
Daimler came with the corporate VC side with an 8 million acquisition, so in 2012. Did you see a difference between the two type of investors?
Of course. So, institutional investor is very much focused on an exit. So it's quite clear what their plan is, what they're trying to do. For the corporate VCs, it's quite different. So, if your contact person changes, that's going to be a big issue. Even the same contact person might have two different opinions, might have hidden agendas. So I think it's very hard to deal with corporate VCs, and you always have to be careful what they are doing, what they are planning.
Meaning, like the person, the point of contact you're mentioning, the one sitting on the board?
The board seats, a shareholder, which also might have two opinions, changed over time. Yeah.
Okay, and looking at Earlybird, they hold the portfolio company for 6 years. Daimler then 2012 for 3 years.
Yes.
What drove basically the exit, and what happened with BlaBlaCar basically? 2015 was the exit.
2015, right. I think it was a long time for Earlybird, and even the fund had to be paid back 2014. Mm-hmm. So we were kind of overdue for them. And the fund,
maybe just for the crowd, when you have a VC fund, it has a definite timeline. There is a time to invest, and there is a time to divest the fund, and that's what it initially explains.
So I think they want to have their money back, And so they thought it's a good market opportunity to sell the company. And so they took their regular majority and said, it's a good time to sell. And then we were talking a lot, and then we were convinced by doing that.
But do you think like the type of investors and the hidden agenda prevented you from actually like growing as fast as possible in the sense of focusing not maybe on the exit, but focusing on
sometimes of course
of competing maybe against BlaBlaCar and maybe buying BlaBlaCar again?
When you work with a corporate VC, then you have to kind of deal with them and also make things right for them, that it fits to their corporate strategy, which not so often fitted to our strategy. So therefore you have to deal with it some time, and then you lose time, of course, and momentum sometimes. That happened several times.
Okay. And BlaBlaCar during that time was growing quite fast. With the booking system, from my understanding, which was a bit more advanced than yours, was getting traction.
No, it was not more advanced. No, that's
Okay,
and even it wasn't different that much.
well, it was free.
Okay. The booking system was free, correct? That's correct.
The strategy of BlaBlaCar, and correct me if I'm wrong, because apparently I have my sources kind of wrong, but BlaBlaCar was still free outside of their home market, right? And that enabled them to compete with you in Germany when they entered Germany in 2014 or?
I think 14 or 13. No, that was 2 years ago.
And
they were free.
Yeah.
Okay. If we're talking about Germany, then correct, they were for free. That was much better for them, because if it's the same service and it's for free, then of course the one who has no charges will grow faster than you. But we had, of course, our customer base using that. But that was kind of shifting a little bit at that time.
Okay. And when did you realize that basically you will have to sell to them? Or
we didn't had to sell to them, but the best offer came from them. So that was.
you had several offers.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you disclose a little bit?
Unfortunately, I can't. But
where are you located? So I'm going to ask some, and then you can answer yes or no.
But there were some bigger companies also.
Were there corporates asking?
No. Yes, as well. Yeah.
Or private equity? Or
equity.
other VCs, like a secondary buyout?
No, another startup, or a large startup, and another corporate.
Okay. And so how did the negotiation, so you had 3 offers on the table, Daimler and Early Bird in your back. How is the negotiation coming along?
Well,
what could you advise entrepreneurs who are at that point in time to do or to not do?
Well, of course, I could advise always be respectful to others and be honest in that what you propose and what you promise to others. But more important is having good lawyers, of course, because they are understanding the mechanisms in contracts and knowing which guarantees and warranties you have to give. So I think this is my major advice, to have good lawyers.
So what are guarantees and reps and warranties?
Well, reps and warranties are that you give a warranty that you are, let's say that you really have 7 million registered users at
Which
that time.
was the KPI you had in 2015?
KPI, but if you would have said there are 7, but in reality it would only be 4 or 5, and 3 of them would be our own creation, then we would have to pay a penalty for that. And that's a warranty.
Mm-hmm. So you're basically liable for what are in the accounts, in the tech, I guess, as well?
That you don't own the domains, that you own the IP, that there are no open lawsuits. Not warranties for. Okay,
let's actually talk about the kind of nightmares that you had during that experience, that entrepreneurial endeavor. I heard a little bit about some disputes over domain name.
Well, the domain name was, I think, the first fuck up, which started right at the launch, because we didn't own the domain, which is a big fuck up. So we rented the domain, which was super stupid. We paid, I think, 10% or a percentage of our revenues to someone who owned the domain. And as we expected to make never any revenue or have staff or employees or marketing expenses, That was okay for us for the first years. But then we found out, surprise, surprise, that it wouldn't make sense to build a good business model out of that. So we couldn't grow, we couldn't sell the company because you can't sell a company without domain. You couldn't take venture capital. So it took us years of negotiation with this guy, and lots of nerves and lots of money, of course, for dealing with that.
And how did you solve it? I mean, I understand negotiating, but at some point you need to give in something in return for the other. So did you have to buy him out, or?
Yeah, exactly. So in this case, money solves everything. So we paid him. We gave him some shares and some money.
Any other down story where you felt, okay, if I had had better advice, or?
I think this was something where advice would have helped a lot. There were other cases which actually made the big nightmares. One shareholder sued one other shareholder in our shareholder circle, and he blackmailed the company, and he tried to revoke a financing round, which was make us file for bankruptcy immediately, and paying for 90 employees is impossible if you're filing for bankruptcy. And this took about, I think, 6 months or 12 months. So this was a very hard time for me in this case.
And you were put in the middle. Did you have anything to do with it, or it was just between two shareholders?
It was just between two shareholders, but if they blackmail you, that you will revoke the financing round, then of course it has to do something with you.
So what did you do?
Well, we had good lawyers, and we assisted in the lawsuit. So we did a lot for it, although we weren't the one who were
And that
painted.
kind of disrupted you from focusing on the business, I guess.
Well, we had enough employees, so it was me who was dealing with that issue. So I tried to absorb it from my partners as good as I could, and also from the employees, which is very important to keep them at work on the project. But for me, it was I think 90% day-on-day business.
Yeah, so some themes that wake you up at night.
It did, yeah.
Let's talk
Literally.
a little bit about the employees. How did you announce the exit to BlaBlaCar?
Announce it.
Yeah, I mean, how did they react? Because I guess for them, that was maybe not such a good news as for you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So we have a weekly all-hands meeting. So we announce it in the all-hands meeting. And I think the reaction were quite surprised. Although I think if you start in a startup to work, then you always have to count that. You get acquired, you get bankrupt sometimes, or you acquire someone. So I think if you're not able to accept that there might be changes to the strategy, you shouldn't work in a startup. But in this case, of course, some of them were surprised, sure.
But I think you negotiated also for them that there wouldn't be any layoff.
Exactly, yeah. So we tried to have a good transition phase. But I think a lot of them didn't want to stay at the company, so they went on their own.
And you think it's a culture difference between what you were, what you had built and what BlaBlaCar?
So, yeah.
Okay, nothing against the French, right?
Nothing against it. But there was a big cultural clash, yes.
Okay. So talking about like a positive thing, so at the end, 2015, you had across 50 nationalities, 90 people working for carpooling.com. You told me earlier you never had any problem hiring great talents, and I think that you managed to build kind of a good employee branding. How did you do this? What were the kind of tools that you were using to bring everyone together and to have such a strong culture?
I think we had a very good management style. So we had a very open management style, and we tried to be open and very honest. I think that was very important for our employees, even in the hard times. Talking about talent acquisition, I think the hardest thing was for Matthias, getting the engineers. That was on their time very hard. We didn't spend so much on employer branding, but I think we did a lot of good things for our employees. And maybe that was kind of word of mouth, and they were talking to their communities. So we really had, I think, very good employees. Very good
Across
guys.
different nationalities.
Different nationalities, of course, yeah. And but corporate company language was English. And I think in that time was not that easy as it today is for English-speaking people to find a job. And we did, so that was also a reason for coming to carpooling.
Yeah, I can testify on this
Yeah.
for non-German. If we look back and across this, 17 years, or now 17 years, but for 2015, 14 years, what do you think you learned most in skills or mindset that is helping you today in your current job as a business angel or with other startups?
I think it helps a lot being structured, very structured. That helps a lot in encountering new challenges and new issues. Because even if you're studying, you have plenty of books to read, so you have kind of a big burden which you have to cover and to overcome. The same applies to every situation in a startup. So it's like you get a call and everything changes from 1 second to the other. Then you have to encounter the issue in a very structured way. Okay, what's next? Okay, understanding the problem, then finding ideas, how to solve it, talk to lawyers in this case, and then execute the solution. And if it doesn't work, next solution. So I think a very structured way is important to cover problems.
And from the past experience, what would you actually stop completely doing, or what you learned to stop doing?
To stop doing? Maybe it's sometimes to keep on doing something which is not successful. So that you understand something is not working, and then just stop it. So like features we did, and we believed this feature would be successful, and we kept on promoting it, and it didn't work out. And then you must have the courage to stop it sometime.
Or be faster in the decision process.
Be fast in the decision and have the courage to stop something. It's funny because some things we see now getting to reality. Some features carpooling is BlaBlaCar is implementing our ideas or the same ideas as we had. So maybe now it's the right time to do it, but we were in some things ahead of time and it didn't work out.
Anything that you wish had happened?
Wish had happened.
For your time at carpooling.com, anything that you kind of regrets, or do you? Okay, let me put it another way. Do you think your exit was a successful exit? Are you happy about it?
It was successful, yeah. I'm super happy about it, yeah. I learned plenty of things in this time I would never have learned anywhere else in any corporations or other companies. So I'm super happy about it, yeah. We learned so much things, and I think we wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be at this situation right now if we wouldn't have done carpooling.
And
I would just be a usual corporate guy or a consultant,
well,
which is also nice. But I think for me, it's.
Well, you can learn a lot also by consulting people.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You would not have wanted to continue that ride much longer with carpooling?
I would have loved to, because we had plenty of ideas, like mentioned before, and we wanted to shape mobility in a different way. So we wanted to have a complete mobility chain, not carpooling. That's why we integrated the buses and the trains, of course, to have a mobility chain. Also, US is a very interesting market. We had a cooperation with Uber in US. That would have opened many options, but then the exit came and we couldn't realize them. But of course, I would have loved to follow a little bit more the journey of mobility.
So what's your next endeavor now? What are you working on?
Well, currently I'm working with my own founding partners, so with Matthias and with Markus, our former CEO, as Eisbach Partners, so our vehicle for some investments and consulting. So we're doing consulting for startups, which is very interesting. So we help them to...
Hey, consulting is something good also.
Yeah, it is, yeah. But not just pure consulting. Business angel a little bit. And we're also working on our own projects, and of course we're trying to build something new.
Okay, so you're on your next endeavor.
Just starting now.
Okay. What if we wanted to have you as a business angel? What would spark your interest? What would you require?
Well, of course, I'm interested in digital stuff because that's something where I have at least some experience. So if it's e-commerce, fine. Mobility is best, of course, because I think I can also bring in a lot of contacts and network. And most important is the team, of course. So team is also what I learned is going through rough times. The team has to be super guys, where you can spare, where you can rely on. That's the most important.
And let's talk now a little bit to finish up about Munich. You are a founder of Munich.
Actually, of Würzburg.
Of Würzburg, moved to Munich. When did you move to Munich?
2006.
2006. Okay, so when you actually were full-time founder.
Yeah.
You stayed here. You're now a business angel here, starting consulting startups and working on your next one. Why Munich? Do you think Munich has a lot to offer, and if so, what? And what is missing here?
Well, maybe I start with the good things. So Munich is a fantastic city to live in. It's super safe. You have the mountains, lake. I think what you hear always from people asked about Munich. It's also good because I have my network here. Very important, and I think you also have access to good talents in Munich. It's very important. Mm-hmm. If I compare to Berlin, which is now coming to the bad side, I think the ecosystem in Munich is still quite poor elaborated. So there are some meetups like yours, for example. But if you compare to Berlin, if I'm there, there's almost every night something, either a founder dinner or I don't know, any meetups. I think that's a little bit advanced, and that's something which is lacking in Munich.
And what about Germany versus the Silicon Valley?
Well, for a founder, it's harder to find money in Germany, or even in Europe. Valuations are much lower. Then the market is difficult in Germany, or at least in Europe, because you have different cultures, different languages, so it's much harder for a founder to make something big, to scale. Yeah. I think that's a big advantage in US. Advantage in comparison to US in Germany is that you don't have that in which university you have been. That's not that important in Germany, much better. Yeah, and I know the market in Germany and Europe, but not in US, so I think for a European founder it's much better to stay in Europe.
But I think also here the risk of failure is much bigger.
Yeah, it is.
Or the mindset about failure.
The mindset is much better, and if you fail, then it's kind of, you get a stamp as you're the one who's failing. Failed once, you fail forever.
Yeah, compared to another statement I heard tonight, which is I need, 4 startups before the 5th, which is, third. 3, and the 4th is a unicorn, right? So see? And you are on number 2, okay. Maybe you come back in a couple of years, right?
I'm 60, yeah.
Anyway, so let's finish our interview and then we open up the floor for questions with a little game, which is about answering as fast as possible. Okay?
Just one word, or
well,
as fast as possible?
You'll see in terms of questions. Favorite travel destination?
Spain.
Luxury travel or backpacker?
A mix between both.
I would also think the first
Depends on
one.
your friends, who is joining you.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Favorite superhero?
Superhero?
Are you a Superman fan? Mario Kart?
No, nothing.
Nothing. No superhero.
I don't even look football, so.
Okay. Best nightclub in Munich? Oh, come on, you know this.
That's a hard question.
Hard?
Not anymore. Not anymore.
There's a new one.
Yeah, I know, yeah. But I don't want to make marketing now for that.
Okay. Techno or classic listener?
Techno.
Adrenaline junkie or beach bum?
Adrenaline junkie.
Favorite startup?
Carpooling.
Favorite conference?
Startup, right?
Yeah? Takeaway or home cooking?
Home cooking.
Vegan or carnivore?
Carnivore.
Wine or beer?
Wine.
Ooh, we only have beer here. Thank you so much for coming, for
Thank you.
joining us.